Good morning. It's Wednesday, January 11, 2023. I wanted to take a minute this morning to address some of the feedback I'm getting from Bible believers in challenging me on science versus the Bible, as well as the source of morality. I made the statement that the Bible is not the source of morality. And I want to mention that when I was a Christian, a Seventh day Adventist in particular, I understood the Bible to be quite literal, not figurative. In that, I also believed that to read anything else really other than Scripture, especially books on science, would really challenge my faith. Now, we were not discouraged from reading other books. Well, yet we kind of were. I will say that Seventh day Adventists have universities and colleges that are all private. They also run many hospitals and medical centers around the country. So they are very well educated people, I will say that. But at the same time, we were discouraged from reading books that talked against the prophet of that church, which was Ellen Gould White. Right around the 19th and early 20th centuries is when she was alive and doing her mission. But I am getting far afield here. One of the things that led me to my non belief was actually picking up several books, especially on history and archaeology and things of that nature. Basically, science and methodology and in the sciences and history. So on that note, I originally thought that the Bible, particularly because of the Ten Commandments, were the source of all morality because it came from God. And of course, God is the beginning of everything. He has no beginning, no end, according to Scripture. His name being I am that I am, or Jehovah. Lots of different pronunciations for the Tetragrammaton, or YHWH. Anyway, what I ended up learning after picking up some books on history are that there were peoples that were older than the Hebrews, namely the Sumerians and also the Babylonians. Understanding history and when the books of the Bible were actually written, you've got the first five books of the Bible, also known as the Torah or the Septuagint. Those were written in as early as the 6th century before the Common Era to as late as the 5th century before the Common Era. Those books including Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, who, by the way, were attributed to Moses. Funny how Moses dies in one of those books, but yet he continued to write those books. So, yeah, the authorship is definitely questioned. But nevertheless, understanding that prior to the 6th century BCE, the Sumerians and Babylonians had their own legal codes that were not attributed to gods necessarily. Maybe in the case of the Sumerians, while they did invoke the names of their gods, the law codes were those issued by the king. And they were basically, if you do this, then this is your punishment. So, three of the particular codes that I am thinking of from scholarship are the oldest, which is Urukagina. That was about I want to say 2100 BCE. This is just from memory. There was also the Code of Urnanu, which I think was about 2000 BCE, and then the Code of Hammurabi in Babylon, which was about 1650 BCE. So, considering that the Torah and the Exodus, the book of Exodus and Genesis, were not written until the 6th century BCE or 600 BCE, those old codes of the Sumerians and Babylonians existed before the Ten Commandments by at least 2,000 years, or 1,500 years, I should say. And of course, fundamentalists and literalists would do well to understand that morality doesn't come from the Bible. It doesn't come from God. It comes from mankind. Mankind understood the necessity of laws, especially because we're a social people. We lived in tribes in the very beginning, and then eventually into kingdoms. Anyway, we would not have been able to survive without having an innate, intrinsic, natural morality. That's just what I wanted to point out to Christians: is pick up a book, read some science, challenge what you believe you know. In fact, if it ends up affirming your faith, well, that's fine. But you actually might learn that your faith is perhaps a little misguided as far as understanding Scripture to be literal or historical. A lot of Christians want to say it's a historical book and the best historical book ever written, which is far from true, full of inaccuracies, full of historical inaccuracies. Many of those events written in the Bible could not have possibly happened at the time in which they were supposedly written. So just some challenge to you, true believers, okay? And I wish you all peace and happiness. Be good to everybody, not those who just disagree with your faith, okay? Try to do better. We all try to do better, I think. All right, enough for today. Thank you for listening.